On November 28th, 2024, Samsung's Advanced Institute of Technology published a research paper. 12 pages, technical language, buried in an academic journal most people will never read. The title was innocuous: Oxide Solid-State Battery Performance Enhancement through Silver-Carbon Composite Anodes. If you skipped past it, you missed the announcement that just changed everything. Samsung didn't just improve battery technology, they made silver a non-negotiable component of the next-generation energy storage system. And they're not alone. Toyota, BMW, Volkswagen, QuantumScape, Solid Power. Every major player in the solid-state battery race is converging on the same conclusion. Silver isn't optional anymore, it's mandatory. For 70 years, battery technology evolved without requiring significant amounts of precious metals. Lithium-ion batteries use copper, aluminum, graphite. Affordable, abundant, scalable. Solid-state batteries require silver, not a little, not as an enhancement, as a core component that can't be substituted. This isn't an incremental change in industrial demand. This is a category shift that breaks the global supply model. Let's establish what Samsung actually discovered. Traditional lithium-ion batteries use liquid electrolytes. They're flammable. They degrade. They limit energy density. They're the reason your phone battery dies after 2 years, and electric vehicles cost $50,000. Solid-state batteries replace the liquid with a solid ceramic electrolyte. Higher energy density, faster charging. Longer lifespan, no fire risk. They're the future. Everyone knows this. The problem has always been the anode interface. When you charge a solid-state battery, lithium ions move through the solid electrolyte and deposit on the anode. But solid-to-solid contact creates resistance. Dendrites form, tiny metallic fingers that grow through the electrolyte and short-circuit the battery. Researchers have tried everything: polymer coatings, pressure systems, alternative anode materials. Samsung's solution? Silver-carbon composite anodes. The research paper details how silver nanoparticles distributed through a carbon matrix create the perfect interface. Superior conductivity, uniform lithium deposition, no dendrite formation. Their prototype achieved 900 charge cycles with 90% capacity retention. That's commercially viable. That's production ready. And here's the critical number. Each kilowatt hour of solid-state battery capacity requires approximately 60 grams of silver in the anode structure. 60 grams doesn't sound like much until you scale it. A single electric vehicle battery pack is typically 60 to 100 kilowatt hours. That's 3.6 to 6 kilograms of silver per vehicle. The global automotive industry produces 80 million vehicles annually. If 20% convert to solid-state EVs within 5 years, we're talking about 16 million vehicles. 16 million vehicles times 4 kilograms average, 64 million kilograms of silver, 2 billion ounces every single year, just for automotive. Current global silver mine production, 822 million ounces total. Industrial demand already consumes 560 million ounces. Investment demand takes another 235 million. The math doesn't work. There isn't enough silver. And automotive is just the beginning. Grid-scale energy storage, home battery systems, consumer electronics, medical devices. Every application that needs reliable, high-density energy storage will eventually adopt solid-state technology. Because once solid-state batteries reach cost parity, liquid lithium-ion becomes obsolete overnight. Samsung just made that timeline real. Samsung isn't operating in isolation. They're part of a technological arms race where every major corporation sees the same opportunity and the same bottleneck. Toyota announced in June 2024 that their solid-state batteries will enter production by 2027. They're targeting 1,300 kilometers of range with 10-minute charging times. Their design? Silver composite anodes. BMW and Volkswagen partnered with Solid Power, a Colorado-based startup that's scaling production of solid-state cells. Their anode technology? Silver-enhanced interfaces. QuantumScape, backed by Volkswagen and Bill Gates, went public specifically to fund solid-state development. Their breakthrough? A proprietary separator that still requires silver current collectors for optimal performance. This isn't coincidence. This is physics. Silver has the highest electrical conductivity of any element, 105% IACS. Nothing comes close. Copper is 97%. Gold is 73%. Aluminum is 61%. In solid-state batteries, where every percentage of conductivity translates to performance, silver is the only material that delivers the necessary efficiency. And the corporations racing to dominate this market know it. But here's what makes this a crisis rather than just increased demand. The supply chain isn't ready at all. Global silver production has been essentially flat for a decade. 800 million ounces, give or take 50 million depending on byproduct production from copper and zinc mines. There are no major silver mines under construction. Primary silver mines are rare and expensive to develop. Most silver comes as a byproduct, which means production is tied to the economics of other metals. When copper prices are low, silver production falls regardless of silver demand. The industry has operated for decades on the assumption that silver demand is stable and predictable. Solar panels need 20 grams. Electronics need micro amounts. Investment demand is cyclical. Solid-state batteries just shattered that assumption. Because this isn't cyclical demand. This is structural, permanent, exponential. Samsung's announcement means every automotive manufacturer now has a roadmap to commercial solid-state production. The timeline is compressed. The race is on. And the silver required doesn't exist in available inventory. COMEX registered silver sits at 80 million ounces. That's the metal available for immediate delivery. London vaults hold approximately 600 million ounces total, but most of that is allocated, owned, not available for new industrial demand. Above-ground investment silver? Roughly 2 billion ounces in coins and bars held by investors worldwide. It sounds like a lot until you realize that 2 billion ounces is exactly what the automotive sector alone will consume in annual production once solid-state adoption scales. The industrial users who need silver to manufacture products will be competing with investors who want silver as a store of value. And both groups will be competing against every automotive manufacturer trying to secure multi-year supply contracts for a metal that is unavailable. The silver market operated for decades with surplus inventory and stable demand. Samsung just announced technology that requires more silver annually than total global production. The corporations know this. They're already moving. In August 2024, Tesla filed a materials acquisition report showing negotiations with 5 major silver suppliers for long-term delivery contracts. In September, Ford announced a joint venture with First Majestic Silver, a primary silver miner, to secure dedicated production. In October, General Motors disclosed they're exploring silver recycling technology specifically for future battery production. These aren't precautions. These are emergency measures by corporations who've run the numbers and realized the supply crisis is unavoidable. And while major manufacturers scramble to lock in supply, smaller companies and new entrants will find themselves priced out entirely. The silver bomb isn't just about price, it's about access. When silver becomes a strategic material with military and economic implications, governments get involved. Export restrictions, strategic reserves, allocation priorities. China already controls 60% of global solar panel production, specifically because they secured the silver supply chain a decade ago. They're not going to let Western manufacturers dominate solid-state batteries without a fight. The technology Samsung announced isn't just a battery improvement. It's the trigger for a global resource competition that will define the next decade of industrial production. Here's what happens when Samsung's batteries reach mass production. Toyota begins deliveries of their solid-state EV 1,300-kilometer range. 10-minute charging. It's everything they promised. Consumer response is overwhelming. Reservation lists hit 2 million within weeks. Other manufacturers panic. Their liquid lithium-ion vehicles are instantly obsolete. They accelerate their own solid-state programs. By 2028, 15 major automotive brands announce solid-state production timelines. They all need silver, massive quantities, long-term contracts. The scramble begins. Scramble. Silver prices, which spent years trading between $60 and $70, break through $100 per ounce. Mining companies rush to expand production, but mines take 7 to 10 years to develop. There's no quick supply response. Existing producers allocate their output to the highest bidders. Major automotive manufacturers with deep pockets secure supply. Smaller manufacturers face delays. By 2029, silver hits $150 per ounce. Solar panel manufacturers, who've relied on affordable silver for decades, face a choice: raise prices or shut down production lines. Many choose the latter. Global solar installation rates, which were climbing exponentially, suddenly plateau as panel costs surge. The green energy transition, ironically dependent on the same silver required for EVs, slows dramatically. Electronics manufacturers face similar constraints. Silver is used in nearly every circuit board, every contact point, every switch. Small amounts per device, but billions of devices. When silver triples in price, consumer electronics costs rise across the board. Smartphones, laptops, tablets, all more expensive. But automotive manufacturers don't care. They need solid-state batteries to compete. They'll pay whatever price silver demands. By 2030, silver reaches $200 per ounce. Investment demand, which was modest at $60 silver, explodes at $200. Everyone who ignored precious metals suddenly wants exposure. But physical silver is no longer available in retail markets. Mints can't source material. Dealers have empty inventory. The premium on physical silver over paper, spot prices reaches 40%, 50%. Eventually, the premium becomes meaningless because physical isn't available at any price. Industrial users only, multi-year contracts only, verified end-use certification required. If you're not an automotive manufacturer or electronics producer with strategic supply agreements, you're not buying silver. And then the first supply chain failure hits. A mid-size automotive manufacturer, unable to secure sufficient silver, delays their solid-state launch by 2 years. Their stock price collapses. Layoffs follow. The company faces potential bankruptcy. Governments start classifying silver as a strategic material. Export restrictions appear. The United States, European Union, and China all implement controls. What was once a freely traded commodity becomes a geopolitical chess piece. China, having secured the largest silver reserves and refining capacity, leverages this position. They offer preferential silver access to countries that adopt Chinese EV technology standards. The global automotive industry fragments. Some manufacturers align with Chinese supply chains. Others scramble to build independent sources. By 2032, the world runs on solid-state batteries. The technology is proven, ubiquitous, essential. But half the world's manufacturers are dependent on Chinese-controlled silver supply. The energy transition that was supposed to democratize power has instead created new dependencies. And through it all, the price of silver keeps climbing. Because demand isn't cyclical anymore, it's not speculative, it's not optional. Every vehicle, every grid battery, every backup power system, they all need silver. And there still isn't enough. Samsung didn't just announce a better battery. They announced the beginning of a permanent supply crisis in one of the world's most critical industrial materials. But there's a layer to this crisis that most analysts miss. Solid-state batteries aren't just about vehicles, they're about infrastructure. The renewable energy grid requires massive energy storage. Solar and wind are intermittent. You need batteries to store power when generation exceeds demand and release it when demand exceeds generation. Current lithium-ion grid batteries are expensive and degrade quickly. Utilities have been waiting for better technology. Solid-state batteries are that technology. California's grid alone needs an estimated 200 gigawatt hours of storage to achieve their 2035 carbon neutral goals. 200 gigawatt hours. That's 200 million kilowatt hours. At 60 grams of silver per kilowatt hour, that's 12 million kilograms of silver. 385 million ounces. For one state's grid infrastructure. Scale that globally. Every developed nation has renewable mandates. Every grid needs storage. The automotive demand for silver suddenly looks small compared to infrastructure requirements. And this assumes the Samsung design is already optimized. Early generation technology often uses more material than later iterations. The first solid-state batteries to market might require 80 grams per kilowatt hour, 100 grams, until recycling technology matures, until alternatives are found, until efficiency improves. The silver demand will be even higher than baseline estimates. Mining executives are already aware. Silver conferences that used to draw modest attendance are now packed with automotive supply chain managers and battery technology scouts. The spot price doesn't reflect this yet, because futures markets still operate on historical demand models. But the physical market knows. Premiums are rising, delivery times are extending, large orders face allocation limits, the divergence between paper silver and physical silver is widening every month. And when the first major automotive manufacturer announces they can't meet production targets due to silver shortages, the paper market will break. Because at that moment, everyone holding a paper contract will realize the contract isn't the same as the metal. And they'll all try to take delivery at once. Samsung's announcement wasn't just a research paper, it was a declaration. They're positioning themselves as the dominant solid-state supplier. They're not just making batteries for their own phones and devices. They're licensing the technology, selling production lines, building partnerships with automotive manufacturers who don't want to develop their own battery technology. This is the same strategy that made Samsung the dominant player in smartphone displays and memory chips. Control the critical component, license it widely, collect royalties on every unit produced. Except this time, the critical component requires a finite material that's already in deficit. Samsung knows this. Their researchers know this. Their supply chain knows this, which means they've already locked in silver supply, long-term contracts, strategic partnerships, vertical integration with mining companies. The research paper they published in November was the public announcement. The private preparation has been happening for years, and now every competitor has to catch up, not just technologically, but in supply chain security. The companies that secured silver early will dominate solid-state production. The companies that waited will face shortages, delays, and price spikes that make their products uncompetitive. This is industrial strategy playing out in real time, and the battleground is silver supply. Samsung dropped a silver bomb. Not the kind that explodes in a moment, the kind that detonates in slow motion over years as every consequence becomes unavoidable. They announced technology that the entire world needs. Better batteries, longer range, faster charging, safer, more reliable. And then they made that technology dependent on a material the world doesn't have enough of. This isn't a conspiracy. This is physics and economics colliding. Silver is the best conductor. Solid-state batteries need the best conductor. Therefore, solid-state batteries need silver. The supply can't scale fast enough. The demand is exponential. The timeline is compressed. Every month that passes, more manufacturers commit to solid-state technology. Every commitment increases silver demand by millions of ounces. Every increase in demand pushes the supply crisis closer. Right now, silver trades like it's 2020. Like industrial demand is stable, like nothing has changed, but everything has changed. The automotive industry just became the largest potential consumer of silver in human history. And they're competing with solar, electronics, grid storage, and every other industrial use that already exists. The shortage isn't hypothetical. It's mathematical, inevitable. You can see it in the Samsung research paper if you read the implications. You can see it in Toyota's production timeline if you calculate the material requirements. You can see it in Tesla's supply contracts if you understand what they're preparing for. The silver bomb is ticking. And when it detonates, when the first manufacturer publicly admits they can't source enough silver, when the first grid project gets canceled due to material unavailability, when the first export restrictions get implemented, the price won't adjust gradually, it'll gap violently. Because markets price in the present until the future becomes undeniable. And then they reprice everything instantly. This is global economy tales. We don't make predictions, we follow the mechanisms, and every mechanism points to the same conclusion. Samsung didn't just improve batteries, they created a supply crisis that will reshape global industry. The companies that understand this now are securing supply chains. The investors who understand this now are positioning accordingly. The manufacturers who do not understand this will be explaining to shareholders why they can't meet production targets. The silver bomb is already falling. The only question is where you'll be when it lands.